Hey, what's happening, family? It's your man, Mark Black. You know what time it is. Time for Morning Joe. By the way, if you haven't picked one up and you're among the founders, the first 1,000 angry black sheep that we just celebrated the other day, you can either grab this cup with the angry black sheep logo and the ADOS hashtag there with a quote from MLK, or you can pick up this one, but get them soon because they're going away. I'm going to have some new logos, new merchandise there available for you that I'll be announcing as soon as it's ready. By the way, this morning I'm having coffee for those who are wondering what's in the cup today. So let's get started. I want to talk to a group of people I don't really talk too much on this channel, but I'd be more interested in talking to every chance I get. And that is my fellow Americans, my fellow citizens here in the United States, right? No matter your ethnicity, but I'm talking primarily to white folks. Let's discuss guilt and responsibility this morning, all right? A lot of times when I, as an ADOS person, right, an American descendant of slavery, talk about the injustices that are faced, and I'm not talking past tense, this is present tense, that ADOS people currently face, have historically faced in this country. What I get from a lot of folk, primarily, again, white folks, right? You know, people of European descent, is this idea that they're not guilty, right? They shouldn't be held to account for acts that they didn't commit, right? I mean, in this country, it kind of goes against the grain for people to be collectively punished for individual bad actors and so on and so forth. And I get that. There's a couple of reasons why it's bullshit, but I get it. The first reason why this is crap is because the people that are non-ADOS in the society don't realize one key factor. You, my fellow Americans, as a society, collectively punish ADOS people every day. Don't believe me? What do you think implicit bias is? Yes, implicit bias is something that even ADOS people have against ADOS people. Why is that? Because every apparatus of education, of information exchange in this society tells you that my people are a guilty people. When you see in your mind's eye the face of welfare, looks like me, or somebody that looks like me. When you see the face of crime, it looks like me. It's somebody that looks like me, right? When you hear a story about somebody in the middle of the night, leaving a nightclub, getting arrested, getting injured during their arrest, and the media says they were resisting arrest or whatever the case may be, you never think about, some 5'4", red-haired ginger white guy. You see somebody who looks like me. And you not only see somebody who looks like me, but the collective punishment aspect comes in when you then walk into the world and every ADOS person, even those that have never had any negative interaction with law enforcement, never have been on any type of government aid or assistance, entitlements, or whatever the case may be, you see them, right? And you believe that in some way, shape, or fashion, even if they haven't, they're going to be. They're going to try in some way to take something from you. Okay? So collective punishment is practiced in this country every single day. It's just practiced against one group of people, and that's ADOS folk, right? So let's get away from this idea that there's no such thing as collective punishment in America. The ADOS experience in this country, one could argue, is a prime example of collective punishment, collective mistreatment. And this goes to the heart of the matter of reparations. A lot of the time, we frame reparations as something that is about slavery. No, it's not about slavery. Or to be more precise, it's not solely about slavery. For ADOS people, right, the American descendants of slavery, our history in this country, the injustices that we face, the collective punishment that we experience on a constant basis, the mental mind fuckery and trauma that we have to face every single day stems from the institution of slavery in this country. Slavery was an institution that was legal, right? It had the full faith and backing of the United States government, as well as many of the state governments in this country at the time. It affected every single state in America, whether directly through the use, the acquisition of the trafficking in the persons and the bodies of slaves, or through the proceeds of slave labor, whether it was cotton, whether it was tobacco, whether it was sugar, whether it was skilled labor, and so on and so forth. Part of the reason that you can see the advent of the unions that a lot of you like to say that you support is because after the end of slavery, for the most part, you had 4.5 million skilled workers, agricultural workers, artificers, right? People who could make stuff like blacksmiths, carpenters, and so on and so forth, who would now be competing with every other citizen in this country for work, for business opportunities, to start, contracting out their work and things like that. One of the first things that occurred at the end of slavery was an attempt to reinstitute it, to have slavery in everything but name, thus the introduction of the black codes. I'm not going to make this a history lesson, but you can go on and on and on. And every single generation of ADOS people have had to face their iteration of the original crime committed against us with the reinforcement of the same criminal acts, all sanctioned by law, all beneficial to every single American except ADOS people. Are you guilty as a white person because of that? No. I don't think you bear any guilt in actions you haven't committed. But are you responsible? See, now we're getting into some areas that y'all don't want to talk about, right? Because how many situations, how many times have you as an individual and my fellow Americans as a collective heard about circumstances that if you only replaced the person, the victim in the circumstance with anybody else who was non-ADOS, you would be able to readily see the injustice in it. An ADOS person gets passed over to go to a university. Nobody bats an eye. Some white girl named Becky Ann gets passed over for a university, and even one ADOS person got in, it's national news. Now we need to end race-based preferences. I read a study the other day that talked about the effects on the racial wealth gap of slavery. And one of the things it took into account that nobody ever talks about is social capital. The slave masters were able to utilize the connections that they've made, the relationships that they built, so much so that even though they took an extreme hit to their wealth and resources at the end of the Civil War, which as traitors, I would argue they should have, that not even 20 years after the Civil War, they had it all back and then some. They were starting to rise again. There was no punishment for the the rebels, the traitors to America. They were given their resources back. They were given their land back. And as soon as they had all of their resources and capital back, they then sought to get the black bodies back, forcing the army to leave the South and not keep the government's responsibility of protecting the former slaves from the onslaught of their former slave masters. But where do you see that today? Right? You see law enforcement in many communities that have negative interactions. And I'm not talking about just the extrajudicial police killings. I'm talking about simple harassment. Driving down the street as an ADOS person is exercise in creating a panic attack. You don't have to be doing anything illegal or so, because there's so many laws on the books, you never know which one you may violate. I would argue that as an American, if you go anywhere and do anything today, you're violating the law and simply don't know it, or there's no one there to enforce it upon you. But even when there is someone there who could enforce the law is enforced overwhelmingly in bias against ADOS people. And yes, you, my fellow Americans, are responsible for that. You're not guilty for having enslaved anybody. Not at all. You're not guilty for having created separate but equal under Plessy v. Ferguson. We know that. But you're responsible for the maintenance through your silence, through your willingness to accept the fruits of the poison tree. Right? You're responsible in that even if you're an immigrant, you come here to reap the benefits that were gained by a country that had once treated a whole sector of human beings like cows, sheep, goats, screwdrivers, hammers as property. You don't escape that simply because you came after the incident occurred. You wouldn't even have a desire to come here if it were not for a country that was built using that stolen labor. The economy built on the traffic and the sale of stolen human bodies, of sold human bodies. Because yes, Africa plays a role in this. They sold us here. I'm not going to argue that y'all came over to Africa and stole us away. No, they made pretty good profit, some of which many families over there are still living off of, having sold us over here. But America is where I am. America is where my ancestors have been for 400 years. America, as a collective, is responsible for my condition. And America, as a collective, owes a debt to my people that my people intend to see paid. You don't have to like it if you're an immigrant. You don't have to think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that you get to come here and reap the fruits of a society that I have to fight every day as a citizen to reap the fruits of. Life ain't about fairness, but it is about justice. It is about justice. And so, like Kyle Korver did in his recent article on privilege, I want you, my fellow Americans, to consider that I, as your fellow American citizen, I, who could one day be your brother if you so desired, don't blame you for the acts of people that came before you. But I do hold you responsible for continuing to allow the institutions, the situations, and the circumstances to obtain that keeps me and mine in a second-class citizenship, in a citizenship that's always so close yet so far away. I do hold you responsible for that. I do hold you responsible for not doing the work to understand the truth behind information and data like criminal activity, like who gets entitlements and who doesn't, who's the actual beneficiaries of affirmative action and things like that. I do hold you responsible for that. I do hold you responsible for the fact that when you see all these negative things, a face like mine is the first one that pops up in your head. You can fix that. You can look at how hundreds of years of American history has created a cycle of injustices that unless something is done to remediate, to restore and repair the descendants of those people and the people who continue to face that today, that it will only continue. I do hold you responsible for that. And more importantly, if you were any type of decent person, hate to argue morality here, but if you were any type of human being with a heart in you, you would hold yourself responsible. And that's just facts. We are coming. America owes us a debt. I intend with everything in me to see it paid. I would hope that you could be an ally, but I'm not counting on it. I'm not banking on your sense of morality or your understanding of justice. You're not guilty for having enslaved anybody, but you are responsible for maintaining it. You're responsible for maintaining the fruits, for being the primary beneficiaries, whether you're immigrants or native born. You're responsible, not guilty. That's all I wanted to say on it. Family, it's your man, Mark Black. Until the next time, I want to wish you all love, peace, prosperity, and power. Real power to my people.